Welcome to the Teach Better Talk podcast, your official podcast for the Teach Better Podcast Network, the hub for all things education, brought to you by teachbetter.com. The Teach Better Talk podcast is committed to answering your burning questions through a variety of lenses and bringing new offers to you and your colleagues to help you thrive throughout the school year. My name is Ray Hewart, and we love your questions here on the pod. If you have any questions that you'd love us to consider as topics for future episodes, please share them with us by emailing info@teachbetter.com.
How can I provide value to spark interest? We are diving into our last episode of the week. I can't believe that we only get to do 3 of these, but I have loved this topic all week long. Before we get too far into this conversation, I do want to give a shout out to the one and only Katie Miglin. Talk about value. She is constantly sharing value with our community, not only with her blogs, online courses, and amazing features on so many podcasts, but also with her social media posts. So make sure you go follow our one and only Katie Miglin on all of our social media platforms. Somebody I also am going to encourage you to go follow on social media is our amazing guest, Jeremy West. I am a super fan of this guy and have definitely stalked him on social media and successfully got him on the podcast because of it. Jeremy, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Ray?
Good. I'm so glad that you were able to make an appearance on Teach Better Talk. I do feel like there are few people that have come on the podcast and it's been a celebrity sighting. This might be one that goes down in history. I really appreciate you making the time.
Celebrity. Wow.
I'm telling you.
That's a powerful word.
Guys, I will tell you this story multiple times throughout the podcast, but you know me. I'm a scroller on Instagram. I scroll and scroll and scroll. I'm on Instagram and this captivating reel pops up. I'm sure you guys have seen it. If you haven't, you're going to go follow him and look at it yourself. It's this guy who's telling this really, really cool story. And I'm sure you'll hear about it on the podcast. There's no way we're going to avoid it. And I go to his page and I'm like, dude, this guy's got to be on the pod. So I message him. Lo and behold, he actually responds and come on the podcast. This is Jeremy. Jeremy, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're located, what you do for a living.
Okay. I do a lot of things. My name is Jeremy West. The Instagram reel, I guess the page that you would be talking about is my company's page called 6 a.m. Work Shirts. I own a dress shirt company here in Kelowna, BC, Canada. It's about 4 hours away from Vancouver. If you have no idea where Kelowna is, it's like a very nice wine region. Gets super hot here. Beautiful kind of tourist destination. And yeah, I mean, I've been in the restaurant industry for so many years, probably like 12 now. And it's been a long journey of just learning lessons. And along the way, I guess underneath subconsciously the entire time I wanted to start a company. And so I came up with the idea to start this sweat wicking dress shirt company that was the perfect dress shirt for restaurants. And it's just been a long journey of how to market it, how to grow. I didn't go to business school. I actually intentionally went the restaurant route instead of going to business school, because in my mind, when I thought of business school, I was going to be learning from teachers who, I guess we're talking to teachers here, so this may upset people, but my opinion was that when you go to business school, you're learning from people who aren't successful in business, potentially.
Right.
But when I came down to it,
you wanted to learn from people who were in the industry that were doing the work that you wanted to be doing. That makes sense.
I wanted to learn by doing, I guess, is what it came down to. I don't learn from textbooks. I learn by doing. So I guess that's what I was trying to say with that long rant. And so ultimately it came down to the point where I needed to make things work with the dress shirt company. I kept running out of inventory and then not knowing what to do. And I knew I needed to make content. I followed guys like Gary Vee and Alex Hormozi, all these guys that are all about like push out content. And ultimately, when it came down to it, I decided to start talking about what I know about, and that's restaurants. So I put out these little 1-minute reels every single day. The whole basis of it right now is today, I'm on day 64 of trying to quit bartending so I can focus full time on my business. which is 6 a.m. work shirts. So that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I've been doing. That's what I spend most of my time doing. If I'm not actually still working at the restaurant, yeah, hopefully that's enough about me.
No, it's so good. There's so many layers here that I'm excited to dive into. And if you haven't caught on to the themes, friends, I'm going to point them out to you. One is I love that you're a student who looked at the education system and said, this isn't working for me. I need to do it differently, because we as a Teach Better team are constantly pushing back on these old ways of teaching. And this concept of learning by doing is really important. And educators, as you reflect on your lesson plans, whether it be reflecting on the week, reflecting on what you're doing today, how can we be better at having students actually in the work, doing the work, exploring the work, rather than having them looking at a textbook or looking at a workbook? This is perfect to talk about today. The other element is I love that you kind of went into the industry and started to build a business and looked at the struggles that you were having in that time, a successful business running on inventory. Geez, what am I going to do about that? These are real business struggles that then came about. So you turn to experts in the field. I'm sure that many of you on the pod have heard of Gary Vee. We talk about him all the time. I know Jeff Gargas gives him a shout out more often than not. Our shout out to Jeff, who's our COO. And now we're getting to talk about how you engage with your community, engage your audience, which I then became one of with these really engaging 1-minute reels. I became a part of your community. I'm not in the restaurant space. I'm not in really the business of needing a white shirt. I'm not even probably your key audience, because I assume you market mostly to men in the restaurant industry. Maybe you have feminine shirts. I didn't even click on your website, but I will tell you, I was so fascinated by the fact that you engaged your audience so quickly. I wondered if educators could learn how to engage students through this way. So that's, again, more that we're going to talk about. And last but not least, I thought maybe there was a good opportunity here for our community to benefit from your incredible company, just with some good workwear, if that was an opportunity there too. So lots to discuss here in this space. Jeremy, tell me a little bit about why clothing. Like, why did you go into the restaurant industry and clothing? Was that something that you found was a need as you were working as a bartender?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting question. So, like, first off, thanks for the plug. I appreciate that. Go visit my website,
Yeah,
6amworkers.com. But
exactly.
honestly, the way it started is throughout the journey of being in restaurants, you kind of like, the whole goal for me was working my way up. I was in it to win it. I wanted to be a GM. I wanted to like work from the bottom position, which is expoing, and then I wanted to become a server, and then become a bartender, and then become a GM or a manager, or whatever, right? And once I finally got the promotion to become, they call it a shift leader, which is you're not necessarily a salaried manager yet, but you're doing the responsibilities of what the salary manager would do on the floor. You have to dress accordingly. You have to wear a suit. So I basically went out, and I could only afford one suit, so I bought a suit, but you have 5 shifts, right? And ultimately, I had one good I had one good suit that I felt good in, and I realized that when I got into work, there was days where I would have good days, and there was days that I would have bad days. And it kind of became clear to me over time that the days that I had good days was when I would wear my good suit. And when I had kind of my B team, or like my B team suit on, or just like the shirt that doesn't fit well, the pants that don't fit well, the color combo that doesn't necessarily make you feel good, those were the days that I didn't have a good day. And so it became clear that I needed to invest in my wardrobe. I needed to go and get 2 or 3 suits and show up to work feeling good every day. So it made me realize that I was almost it was almost being determined whether I was going to have a good day or not based on how I felt about myself and what I was wearing at work. So I just became obsessed with suiting up. I mean, along that whole time, I was also a huge fan of How I Met Your Mother. So Neil Patrick Harris's character Barney, when he talks about suiting up, that was something that just, I guess, was subconscious for me. But ultimately, it was about how I felt. And when I started actually investing in my wardrobe, I started feeling more confident when I would have to go deal with tables and have to talk to people that had a problem or something. And I actually found out that there's a psychology term called enclosed cognition, and that is about how you do feel different based on what you wear. So I think they did this study where it was like they got people to do a test wearing a doctor's lab coat and then just wearing normal people clothes, and they actually scored better on the wearing the doctor's lab coat when the stethoscope, because they associate doctors as being smart. So it's totally like this psychology trick. And I guess to go back to how I started the dress shirt company is obviously underlying. I was a fan of clothes. I cared about fit. I would take everything to get tailored because that matters. And there was just kind of something missing in the restaurant industry. I mean, it's a high pace environment. You're sweating every single day. Within the first hour of your shift, you've got pit stains. And alongside that, I was always a cyclist, and all of my cycling jerseys had two different fabrics. There was like a sweat wicking mesh on the sides and then a different fabric on the front and the back. So one day it clicked that dress shirts are only ever one material. Why can't they be two? So I just kind of went from there. It worked for me. I didn't get those pit stains anymore. It would wick away my sweat, and it just kind of filled that desire to want to start a company, wanting to invent something, and I just went from there.
I think this is going to resonate with so many educators, whether male or female, wearing a button-up shirt, because our second week of the pod launching into this season, we had a week dedicated to dressing for success. And regardless of
Mm.
what you like to wear and what your definition of success looks like, you're right that what you're wearing, whether it be color related, fabric related, or anything in between, is going to determine a huge element of your day. And it's a great reminder as we're heading into the month to remind yourself to really dress your body for what you're walking into, dress yourself for success. And when you're choosing to invest in your clothing so that you feel good and that you feel good for what you're walking into, to find the right products that work for you. There is zero reason to invest in a good, solid white button-up shirt that's just going to give you pit stains when you're running around with your students, because the job is to run around with your students. So why destroy the shirt your first hour in like you would serving? Why not invest the same money you're going to spend into a product that's actually going to work and be sustainable for you, like your company's already producing? So I want to make sure we give a shout out again to the business. And then I have another follow-up question for you. So where can they go to find your products?
6amworkshirts.com.
I love it. So powerful.
Yep.
So you create this amazing product. I love that. And then you decide to get into the hook and bring people in so they can be aware of the product. And that's where we start to look at the value that you started to add, which got you, I assume, on social media. We are going to transition into our next segment and start to talk about that value. As an educator, this absolutely applies to you because you provide value to your students every single day. And how you engage them and hook them into a lesson is something that you do more often than not. It's not just at the beginning, it's every single moment of the day, especially with those naughty kids. You got to hook them in all the time. Be right with us. Stick with us.
Quick pause to talk about the Edu Creator Club Plus newsletter. Are you ready to take your creativity to the next level? The Teach Better team is here to help with a weekly newsletter with doses of inspiration, strategies, and free tools to help you thrive as an educator and as a creator. Whether you're looking to sell on Teachers Pay Teachers or start a side hustle, this is a great free place to start. Head over to teachbetter.com/educreator newsletter to sign up now.
We are here with Jeremy West discussing how we can add value to really hook in our viewers. I started the pod this way and we are going to really dive into it. I found Jeremy on social media, loving his content. I am not a bartender. I don't own a clothing business, but I was hooked. I watched his reel probably weeks ago. I still remember it. I was so hooked in, had to connect with him. And even through just our conversation here before the recording, Jeremy, you mentioned that you have a little bit of a process of how you really bring in your viewers, and even noted the fact that it can't be something that takes like 15 minutes or even 5 minutes to do. Your reels are short and simple. They really have to happen within what, like a minute? How does that happen for you, and how did you get to creating this system?
Yeah, I mean, the system has come just through iteration and trying different things. I mean, I'm a creative at heart. I went to university for music. I'm a musician, so I'm all about creativity. I love books by like that Mihail Csikszentmihalyi, or however you say his name. Like he's got one on creativity and creative processes. I'm big into Rick Rubin, who also talks a lot about creative processes. And ultimately, what it comes down to is you understand that whoever your audience is, they need to, like you said, be hooked in, but they also have to be engaged the entire time. And I mean, I started out trying to just sit in front of the camera and talk. And what I realized is that when you do that, you're kind of thinking, there's awkward pauses. And yeah, you can edit that out, but it doesn't really flow. So ultimately, what it came down to through trial and error is realizing that my creative process, the way I can get things out the most efficiently, even though it still takes a few hours every single day, um, I can't do it in a way where a lot of people batch content and they'll try and make a whole bunch of content on Mondays and then edit it on Tuesdays and then on Wednesdays release it, and then they'll have 5 different videos they can do for a week. I just don't work that way. I need to do it when my brain is in a peak, I guess, creative state. And for that, what I find that's best after is every morning, the first thing I do after walking my dog is I have a coffee and I read for an hour. And as soon as I read for an hour, I'm in this kind of space where I can be creative. One of my favorite podcasters is named Tom Bilyeu. He's got this idea of ideas in equals ideas out. And so as soon as I get those ideas in from reading, then my brain is ready to get ideas out in terms of the creative process. So what I do is I sit down on my computer, and usually there's just something it comes out of nowhere. There'll just be a thought of like, basically it's something that I know I've learned along the way that I remember not knowing. And then as soon as I learned it, it clicked. And from then on, it's like something changed and I was better at what I was doing. So whether it's trying to recall one of those moments, they usually just somehow come out of thin air. There's an idea, and I put that short idea onto paper, not onto paper. I use my laptop. I just put it into notes on my laptop. I have a creative playlist that I always listen to. It's either jazz or orchestral music. And while I'm listening to that, I just basically try and refine that idea into under a minute, and within these like kind of sentences that I can kind of stack on top of each other, where when I'm recording, I can memorize the whole sentence and then say it. I don't want to be reading off a teleprompter. I don't want to memorize everything because that's a lot. So basically, I try and get it all out onto notes, and I fine tune everything constantly. I'm constantly reading it back to make sure that there's congruency all the way through, and eventually it just kind of feels polished enough to the point where I can press record on the camera and go from there. And I guess ultimately too, like one thing I've learned just through scrolling myself, and luckily I also have a friend who used to own a company that was called player.gg, and they would do live streaming services for like Twitch. And he had all this data that he shared with me one day, and he told me that it was very clear that the people on the platform with professional equipment, like professional microphones and professional cameras, had a higher viewership because it does kind of sub-communicate quality, right? So I invested in good quality gear. I have a good 4K camera with a great lens, and I've slowly been learning about lighting. Hopefully that's okay. But I think all of those little things kind of matter when people are scrolling through, because ultimately when they're scrolling, you don't even know what you're looking for, right? But you have to grab attention right away. And I think that quality video and quality audio is one of those things that kind of does grab attention, right? It kind of sub-communicates quality. So
well, and that
yeah,
that
that's what I do.
that sub communication of quality, it finds itself in any industry. If you're someone who is producing content on Instagram, lighting and audio is going to be such an important element. If you're in the classroom, tone of voice and dress and, culture in a classroom is going to be the elements that your students are going to pick up on. Jeremy, do you mind giving an example of some of the ideas that you would write down? What would be an idea that might come to mind that you might produce a video on, even an example of a video that you might have already created a video on?
Yeah, I mean, the ones that seem to be resonating most with the audience are things that inevitably in the restaurant industry, there's these moments where you have to kind of deliver bad news, right? It's like, your steak is overcooked. I'm so sorry, right?
Oh,
But you have to deliver that message in a way that makes the guest feel cared for, right? So that's ultimately what that's one of the best examples, because those are the reels that are resonating, is like, I'm delivering a bad news, or I'm delivering a negative message, but twisting it in a way where I'm helping them and it's positive. So it's less of like, hey, I'm so sorry your steak's overcooked, it's going to take 20 minutes. It's more of like, hey, I'm so sorry, we've overcooked your steak, and we're going to do our best to make sure that we provide a quality product for you. We really pride ourselves in delivering a quality product at this restaurant. So we are going to prioritize the quality over how fast we get it to you, right? So we want you to enjoy your steak. We're going to put another one on the grill. It's going to take another 20 minutes. Unfortunately, can I get you anything in the meantime so you are happy the whole way through, right? So that's one of the biggest things. There's other ones are like, I remember like feeling stressed in moments, right? And I remember finding ways to deal with that stress at work. So then I'll write a reel about that or something along those lines. So
okay, Jeremy, I could tell you exactly the video that caused me to reach out to you. And it was the one where the bar was really backed up and you had to go to your table and tell them that their drinks still weren't ready, but you didn't want to comp their drinks. And I immediately was like, oh my God, this video is such a good example of how to hook your audience, how to engage your audience, but also teachers, go back to that video, also how to use language to talk to parents and how to not apologize to your parents, but how to use appropriate language so that you're not apologizing. You didn't do anything wrong, but how to speak with confidence. See, that's what I loved your account. There's so many things that other industries are able to take away, whether they're bartenders or not, just from the way that you're approaching social interactions that I really loved. And it's so funny. I'm going to say this again, Jeremy. I watched this reel, I think it was over 2 weeks ago. I remember it vividly. It was so well done. So I really appreciate that you're putting this content out there, because not only are people, I'm sure, in the restaurant industry enjoying the content, but I think there's so many things we can learn by picking up on these nuances, regardless of the industries that we're in. And I know that so many teachers are, hopefully, friends, I'm talking to you, go over to this account and follow it, because it's a brain break from education, but there's so many things that we as teachers can pick up on from the language and interactions that he's having on these videos. So powerful.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, ultimately what it comes down to, I think, is like, anytime I'm learning anything, I'm looking for like, what's the very baseline thing, right? Like, what's the platform? What's the foundation of this, Like, and when it comes down to it, whether it's restaurant industry or not, which is, yes, I'm focusing on the niche of the restaurant industry because that's what my product is. But it all comes down to empathy, whether it's me dealing with a situation at work or me trying to create the content. It comes down to me imagining in my mind what that person may be feeling, how I would feel if I was in that exact scenario, and then trying to communicate whatever I need to communicate, keeping that in mind, right? You don't want them to feel negative, right? You don't want them to feel negative emotions. You want them to feel positive emotions. So how can I twist what I'm saying to make them feel the best way possible, right? Yeah.
Well, and that's easily relatable. I mean, a server talking to a server in an example is very similar to a teacher talking to a colleague, another teacher. A server talking to a table that they're serving is very similar to a teacher talking to a community member, a parent, or a student that they're serving. A server talking to a shift leader is very similar to a teacher talking to a principal. I mean, friends, I would love to encourage you, if you're listening to the pod, to go over to that account and practice these elements of picking up on different language skills and different fun hook and engagement ideas, because there's a lot we can learn here. And Jeremy does it very well in these really short clips that are both entertaining and valuable. So I appreciate that, Jeremy. There's so much there. You know, the one thing I also want to note before we wrap up this conversation, because I know we're running over time, Jeremy, was a conversation we had before we recorded about a book that you read in a class that taught you a lot about how you operated. I think it was a psychology class. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it wasn't a class. It was just me searching for something else to read that would help me be successful in business, really. And ultimately, what it came down to, I guess, a quick backstory. First off, I have no time constraints. So if you want to go over time, that's totally okay with me. This is the kind of stuff that I love. I love talking about this stuff. So
Okay.
ultimately, what I realized through watching a million YouTube videos of successful people is there was two common denominators that they would all talk about. One was that they were always willing to be uncomfortable, and two was that they all understood psychology. So when I was going through these videos and like recognizing these patterns, I was like, oh, okay, like if these successful people understand psychology, I'm going to start reading about psychology. And that ended up being a passion of mine. And I started just diving into every single psychology book that I could. And I came across one that you're talking about, the book called Self-Determination Theory. And it's a theory based off of autonomy and autonomy support. And before I read this book, I didn't even know what autonomy meant. And I had to Google the definition. But ultimately, it did come back to like mental health almost. Like I was always concerned about my mental health, and it's always been a focus of mine. And they had this analogy right at the start of the book that your mental health is kind of like a house plant, and your house plant needs three crucial ingredients to thrive and be green. And those are, I guess, phosphorus, potassium, and nitrogen, right? So as soon as you thwart one of those, if it's missing one of the ingredients, then it's going to start withering and browning and not looking so healthy. And they're saying that our psychology and our mental health is the exact same way. You have three ingredients that as soon as one is thwarted, you start to brown and you start to wither. But if you have all three, you are green and you're flourishing, right? So that kind of clicked for me. And the three are connectedness or relatedness. So we all need to feel as though whatever we're doing every day, that we're relating with other people. We're social beings, right? So as soon as you don't start feeling related to people and connected to people is when your mental health and psychology is going to start to wither and brown. The next one is autonomy support. So feeling as though you're in control of your environment, right? We evolved over however many years, and when we were in control of our environment, we could rest and relax. And if we weren't in control and it was chaotic, we would kind of be chaotic and we would stress, and therefore it directly translates to our psychology, right? What is the third one? I forget the third one right now, but we can talk. We want to talk about autonomy support, right?
Yes.
So autonomy support, basically what that is understanding that everybody in the foundation of our psychology craves control. And that is for the sake of safety. We control our environment to feel safe. And when we feel safe, we therefore can feel rested and relaxed and be in that state of mind, which is what this kind of the state of mind we want to be in, right? And as soon as you rob somebody of their sense of control or rob themselves of their autonomy, they're going to react in a way that they don't feel autonomy anymore. They feel as though you're robbing their control. So therefore, they're going to feel chaotic and they're going to start that psychology withering the brownness, right, of the plant. So ultimately, that lesson translated to so many areas of my life. It helped me deepen my connection with my father, for instance, in the simplest way. Like, he had hip surgery once, right? And I went home to help him through that through the month, and I spent a month with him. And what I realized is that even though he's injured, he still wants and craves autonomy himself, right? So the first thing when you're helping somebody that is injured, you want to do everything for them. You want to ask them if they want water. You want to ask them if you want to go get this for them and go to get this for them, right? But I realized that it's more about like taking your foot off that gas. And as soon as he asks me to get him something, that's him being in control. That's him feeling autonomous. So then he gets that, and I can let him feel as though he's in control. So that's like autonomy support, right? And that lesson translated to being a better manager, being a better friend, being a better uncle, like all of these things. You have to realize that people crave that control. And as soon as you like tell them to do something or ask if you want them to do something, you're robbing them of that control, basically.
I loved that reminder, and I appreciate us finding the time to highlight that in the podcast. I think that's a beautiful reminder for those of you listening to the pod that are working with students who may come across as resistant at this time of the year, or a student that you may have not yet connected with, or if you yourself seem to be finding yourself unbalanced. This could be a really beautiful check-in with yourself and possibly with that student as a point of contact. If you're using Mastery Learning, especially those who are using the grid method, that is a beautiful way to give students back the autonomy, to have choice, to have the opportunity to advocate for themselves and find that balance again. So if those of you who are using the system or not using the system, just know that we are here to support you to find that balance. And if any of you are ever looking to better in this area, the Teach Better team is here to support you. And Jeremy, I really like that that's something that you discovered in yourself. And I really appreciate the reminder that as educators, we can utilize this as well in our practice day to day. Stick with us. We're going to get into our major takeaways. And of course, Jeremy's contact information. Y'all need to go follow him on Instagram. I think I've said it 19 times. All right, we have discussed so many things about how to add value to allow us to connect with so many different people in our lives. We have Jeremy West here, and I want to first highlight one major takeaway of this episode. Jeremy, if you had to identify one major takeaway that you want our community here to walk away with from this episode, what do you think it would be?
Well, I mean, we keep talking about value added, right? And I think that that's what the reason you reached out to me is I stopped focusing when it comes to marketing my product. I stopped focusing on why my shirt is better than other people's shirts, right? And I started focusing on sharing knowledge that had helped me get better at what I was doing, right? So I mean, realistically, you found my reel, and the hundreds of other thousands of people that have found that reel, something is connecting with them. And that's because they can watch that 1 minute reel and then potentially get better at what they're doing, whatever they're going to apply it to, right? So I think ultimately what it comes down to is what I'm trying to do is add value to whoever may watch this reel, right? So I would say it's probably that.
Yeah. How can you help someone today? How can you add value to somebody else's life? I love that. And how can you hook them into your lesson and add a little bit of value along the way? So good. Jeremy,
I could talk about hooks all day long, right?
Oh, I know.
Like
we need to bring you back on the pod.
first 3 seconds is what matters, right? It's like
Yeah.
people are scrolling, they're busy, they have so much content to watch. What is that first 3 seconds? How are they going to want to watch a whole minute when what you say in the first 3 seconds will make them decide whether they're going to watch the whole reel or not, right?
So friends, if you need a masterclass on that, we're going to force Jeremy to come back on the pod, or you could just go to his Instagram and just swipe through all the videos, just all first 3 seconds of all the videos, just watch them. Jeremy,
Get the pens out, take some notes.
Yeah, exactly. How can our community stay connected to you?
6 a.m. work shirts on Instagram, TikTok. Those are the main platforms that I'm posting on. And then just the website, 6amworkshirts.com. Yeah, I do everything on those. It's just 6 a.m. work shirts. I mean, just Google it. 6 a.m. work shirts should pop up. Yeah.
Love it. Friends, if you go get a work shirt from 6 a.m. work shirts, make sure you take a photo. I want to see it. Tag me on Instagram when you pose with your new work shirt. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate the conversation.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.